and welcome to Jam with Us. We're so excited that you decided to join us this morning to talk about all things Jamboard and to hear about some really fun, engaging strategies and activities to use with your students. So today we have myself. My name is Dominique Wicker. I'm with the EdTech team. We have Karina Moran from Teaching and Learning. We have Sharon Morales from Teaching and Learning, and Amanda Weeks-Hughes, also from Teaching and Learning. And we have some awesome things to share with you today about Jamboard. So before we get started, we're going to show a brief video that talks about Jamboard in Google Meet and also talks about some new features with Jamboard regarding version history. So let's go ahead and watch that quick video.
Hello class, welcome. Today we are going to be working on a collaborative Jamboard. We're going to do that inside of our Google Meet. So I'm going to go over here and click the three dots in order to share the jam with you. Now I could start a new one, but I'm going to go ahead and choose a template I have from my Google Drive. And it is going to allow me to pick one. I'm going to go ahead and go with this map of the USA because that's what we've been working on. Okay, so notice it gives me the option to give them access to the file. Do I want them to be able to edit it or view? You do need to make that choice here. So I am going to let them edit so we can work on this collaboratively. All right, class, you're seeing the jam now? Uh-oh, I forgot to clear this jam, but I can easily do that by going up here to the top. And now Google Jamboards have version history, just like docs, sheets, and slides. So I can jump back into here and I can see my students have been working hard. So I'm going to jump into this one and I'm going to find the one that doesn't have any labels. There we go. And I'm going to rename this one so I know that this is the one. This is going to be my template. Now I can easily restore this version. And now we have a blank slate for the class to get started. So class, go ahead and start filling in some of the states that you know that you've been studying. And I'm going to click out of here. Oh, I didn't mean to exit out of the jam, but that's okay. Now I can go down into the bottom. Notice it's now attached to this Google Meet. And I can click here, click back into attachments, and go right into my map. And I can see my students are working really, really hard. So this is just another way to use Jamboard inside of Google Meet.
Awesome. So Jamboard is essentially an online whiteboard, and there's three main ways that you can use it. And today you're going to see for different subject areas for K through 5, different activities and strategies that you can use within Jamboard. So one of the first ones is it is essentially a whiteboard. So if you use it as nothing else, you can use it for direct instruction. So if you still have students who are virtual, you can use it as a whiteboard just like Rebecca just demonstrated in the video in Google Meet. You don't have to share the link with your students. You can just share your screen. You can also use it as a whiteboard within your classroom using your smart panel. It's also great for modeling a task, just about any task that you can think of. And as long as you're only using it to show the whiteboard, you don't have to necessarily share it with your students. It also is great for a group and class collaboration for whole group activities and also smaller group activities of 4 to 5 students, for example. All students can collaborate in one jam. They can move things around, manipulate things, add text, sticky notes, and all that's going to be demonstrated today. And it's a really good tool and strategy to get them to collaborate and engage with each other. If you are going to be using it for students to collaborate, you do need to share the jam, and the easiest way to do that is with Google Classroom, just like you would share any other assignment like we've been doing for the past year. It's just important to remember that you have to change the sharing settings, just like Rebecca demonstrated in the video as well, so anyone with the link can edit so that students are able to jump in all at one time and move things around and add content, remove content, or whatever the directions may be that you give them. Also, it's great for independent work. So today you're going to walk away with some jams that have already been created in templates, for example, and those can be assigned to your students to complete independently. And you would assign those again in Google Classroom, just like any other assignment. But instead of giving them view access only or edit access, you would choose the option to make a copy for each student so that each student has their own individual copy to then go in and manipulate and complete their work and return to you for review. So 3 main ways that it can be used, and Sherry, Amanda, and Karina are going to go over specific examples of how to use them with your students for the major subject areas. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sherry.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sherry Morales, and I will be sharing with you how to implement ELA instruction and intervention practices using Jamboard features and tools. The following 4 recommendations come from the Educator Practice Guides located on What Works Clearinghouse. Recommendation number 1 is to teach students academic language skills, including the use of inferential and narrative language and vocabulary knowledge. This lesson demonstrates how you can use Jamboard to develop vocabulary knowledge around characters, feelings, and traits. For this lesson, you can use the Shapes tool to create your own graphic organizer, or download and save a copy of a graphic organizer and use the Add Image tool to upload your saved organizer. You can then use the text box tool to add headings to your organizer and the Sticky Notes tool to create examples of characters' feelings and traits. You can work with students to develop a student-friendly definition of the words and then sort the vocabulary under the appropriate headings. In math, you can use graphic organizers to have students work with equations that are equal to a given number. And in science, you can use graphic organizers to teach similarities and differences in scientific concepts and ideas. Recommendation number 2 is to develop awareness of the segments of sounds in speech and how they link to letters. This lesson demonstrates how you can use Elkonin boxes to develop awareness of the segments of sounds in CVC words. For this lesson, you can use the Shapes tool to create a 3-letter Elkonin box. Then use the Add Image tool to do a Google image search of CVC words. Finally, you can use a sticky note to mask the picture cards until you are ready to reveal. You can work with the students to see the word, say the word, pig, and segment the sounds in speech, p, I, g. Recommendation number 3 is to teach students to decode words, analyze word parts, and write and recognize words. Instead of using picture cards, you can use the text box tool to create word cards of CVC words. Students would hear the word cat, say the word cat, and use the pen tool to write the word in the corresponding boxes. In math, you can use the boxes to display pictures and show the action in a word puzzle or situation. In science, the boxes can become comic strips to show stages of a cycle, the water cycle, a plant cycle, or butterfly. Recommendation number 4 is to ensure that each student reads connected text every day to increase accuracy, fluency, and comprehension. This lesson demonstrates how you can ensure students read connected text through repeated readings of a poem or part of a text and support comprehension through text annotations. You can use the text box tool to type or the Add Image tool to upload a poem or portion of a text. You can use the laser tool to guide students as they engage in repeating readings of the text to increase accuracy and fluency. You can use the pen tool to have students underline or highlight key ideas and details from the poem or text. And then have them use the pen tool to illustrate the text to demonstrate their understanding. In a math word problem, students can annotate the text to show the parts that they know and what information they need to find out. In science, you can use linking literacy resources and have students annotate text to identify critical content, such as the title, subtitles, pictures, graphs, and words in bold letters. And now I'm going to turn it over to our colleague, Karina.
Hi everyone. So here is a game. It's called Black Hole, and I'm going to ask my friend Amanda to work with me. We've already started playing the game. I have the green post-it notes and she has the pink ones. For Black Hole, we are supposed to put these post-it notes on one of the yellow circles to show that this is the position that we want our numbers to be. We've taken turns and now it's up to me to go to number 7. We just want to put them in numerical order. I put down 8. Please put 8. And this is something that you could have students working with, somebody who's virtual and somebody who's at school. There's 9. Please take 9. And last turn, my turn is 10. And so is yours. And the rule of the game says that the last hole becomes a black hole. And that's why I'm moving the holes. And everything that's around the black hole gets evened out. So now we have to look at the numbers next to these. I have 8 and 7. That makes 15. And Amanda has 6 and 8. So 15 is greater than 14. So Amanda, I won. Thank you for playing with me. In ELA, you can write letters on the circles and students will take turns saying the letter names and placing a sticky note over the letter name that is correct. The students with the most sticky notes or points of the game board is the winner. And in science, you could use this game to answer questions that would represent a number. When a student answers that question correctly, the student places their color sticky note on the number. That was the question. If the student answers incorrectly, the other student or team has a chance. These questions could be from bell ringers or exit tickets to use throughout a unit or throughout a review. So that was Black Hole. And please remember this can be played in K-5. You can change what's on the post-it note if you want to use fractions or decimals. Next, I have an opportunity to share with you a productive struggle, grade 4, unit 13, lesson 2, which happens to be something that we have for every math lesson. We have a productive Jamboard that is linked in our digital planning guide in K-5. This one happens to say that Casey has a half a gallon of juice. How many 1-pint containers can he fill? Solve this any way you want. Well, the really cool thing about Jamboard is that I took this nib from our textbook and now I can actually shrink it so that I can actually work and I have more room to show my answer. If I choose to do this as a gallery walk after my students all answer, I can teach my students to use these pictures of a check mark or they can draw it and a question mark. If they put a check, that means that the answer that was written, somebody else agrees with. If they put a question mark, they can put their name so that we can figure out what the question is that they're still wondering about. Now, a really cool tool that we can use is Equatio. Equatio, it's a Chromebook extension, and I already have this downloaded, so I'm just going to open it up. And what happens when I have Equatio is that now I have new tools at the bottom. One of the coolest things is insert math space. When I open that up, I have a new menu, and now I can open and put things that I usually cannot just use a Jamboard for. For example, if I wanted to measure the angles in a rectangle, that would be a rectangle. I can insert it into my Jamboard by copying and pasting. And then I can go back to my math space to find the tool that I can use. To measure the angles in a shape, I can use a protractor. There are different ways that I can show the protractor. I can make the graduations greater or smaller. I could choose to show the labels or not. Once I insert it, again, it goes into my Jamboard. So now my students will be able to use it. I'm moving it around. So Equation is a really good tool to use with a collaborative Jamboard to make sure that students have the opportunity to see how all these manipulatives and these representations show what you're learning. In ELA, you can make sure that you use a productive struggle like this when you're asking students to think about, do they agree, do they disagree? A teacher can upload 2 different student responses to a discussion prompt. Peers can take turns explaining whether or not they agree or disagree and why. In science, if you're working out a multiple choice question for a bell ringer or a test question, students can still figure out, do they agree and disagree by using these symbols. Next, I'm showing an example of how to use a counting collection. This is an activity that's usually used for K-2. And what I've done is I've actually put this into 3 parts. First, students have to estimate, then they have to count, and then they have to write how many they think they are. So if you could put it in the chat, tell me, how many flowers do you think we have? My partners, Amanda and Sherry, how many flowers do you think we have? I'm using the pen tool so I can write. Anybody think of a number? Maybe 15? Amanda, what do you think?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, 12.
Oh, you're going with 12. All right. Well, now I'm actually going to move. And what I've done is actually put pictures of flowers behind the other flowers so that it doesn't look that clustered, but the picture have to take a time and really notice everything that they have to count. And then they'll be able to write how many. Again, with the pen tool. In science, this could be used to drag and drop if you're sorting into categories or if you're doing a matching activity like real and make-believe, endoskeleton and exoskeleton, behavioral and physical adaptations. For ELA, you can drag and drop images to describe the setting, the events, or the characters. So now I want to remind you one more time that layering is a possibility that you can use to make sure that the Jamboard doesn't look like it is covered with lots of things, but you can put things on top of each other by just layering them. As you can see, I'm hiding the pictures behind the others. Now I'm going to ask Amanda to take it over to the next slide.
Hi, I'm Amanda Weeks Hughes, and I am a K-8 science resource teacher. And I'm going to show you a couple of resources that you can use with Jamboard. I hadn't used it for some time when we first started using it for our Google resources, but once I started, I couldn't stop and have just started creating all kinds of different templates for our teachers and students to use. So I am sharing 3 of these with you today. The first one here is a 3-2-1. So, for example, if we are reading a text through, for example, STEMscopedia or a nonfiction text, students can then show their learning by what were 3 important terms, 2 facts that they learned from it, and then they can actually upload an illustration as well. So what I used here were sticky notes. So on the left side, you can actually click on the sticky notes, change the color of the sticky note that you want to use, as well as write inside the text. Yes, and then you can save it, as well as when the students are working on them, they can actually click on one of those 3-2-1s, they can edit it, and then change their responses for those. And then for an illustration, they can actually upload an illustration on the side where it has an image, and they can go to a Google image or something they may already have and put that image in and then just lay it over the top of the one illustration that they wanted. Or they can get creative and draw with that pen the best that they can. All right, so in language arts, with using this feature, it could be, for example, if you're reading a text like a fictional text for what were 3 most important things that you learned through a chapter, what were 2 important facts about a character, and then maybe even add an illustration, even like maybe if it was a setting or a feeling or something that a character may have. And then for math, possibly when you're working through different equations, for the 3 important things, what are 3 different strategies that you could have used to solve this equation? What were 2 ways that you could solve it? And then what was your favorite way of solving that problem? So those are different ways of using 3, 2, 1. Our next one here is a concept mapping. You probably have seen this strategy many different ways with the Frere model. This is probably one of my favorite ways of using it with science, where you have your word in the middle, where you can type in the word from the text box, or you can use it as just throw in a sticky note on top of that page if you want to. And then the students can type in their definition of helping them learn that word for whatever the text that they may need for their vocabulary. Write a meaningful sentence. They can type in or add a picture image for that example, as well as in the far bottom right-hand corner, a lot of our words have prefix, suffix, or even root words, as well as for language arts in this sense. And as you can see, where you can write on here is, Karina is actually showing the nice little highlighter that we have, or should I say the laser pointer is an actual cool little tool that you can use. And it just shows that information quickly and then it goes away. The background that I have there can actually be put in there to then be able to drag over the top of it by going up to the set background, and you can change a background, or you can actually go down where there's that little plus button, and then you can actually add a background, and then you can have overlays on top of it, and you don't have to worry about your background moving, or like Karina had showed you earlier with a I can't even think of what it's called now. The grid lines that were there. So also for the other 2 subject areas for language arts, this would also be a great way of going through their vocabulary, as I had mentioned, whether you're talking nonfiction or fiction text. A lot of times students may be struggling with a word or something that they're reading, and you ask them to pick out 2 or 3 words that they struggle with during their reading for that day. They can put that in there, go look up the definition, how they could use it in a sentence, and help them build on their vocabulary. And then for math, a suggestion would be to be able to label coordinate planes. So those are a few ideas for that graphic organizer. And then for this last one, setting up like a diagram. So in science, we draw and label a lot of diagrams for our learning. And so what I did here was I took the water cycle. So while you are teaching the water cycle, as we showed earlier, the little pointer, where you can actually discuss with your students what's going on in the text, why this would be at this point, actually pulling in the different pieces with evaporate, condensation, runoff, and so forth, and actually showing different arrows along the way. And then you can actually then assign this out to your students and actually have them move the different pieces into place. And with the arrows being there as well, when you click on the arrows, you can actually manipulate the arrows where you can move them up and down, sideways, however you need to get that arrow to go in the direction that you want. And then to just up the rigor a little bit, I have a sticky note, a pink little sticky note in the top corner, where then I want students to be able to actually explain to me how the water cycle works. Besides just dragging and dropping, I actually need them to also give that to me in a wording. So they can either erase what's here and type over, or they can put in another sticky note for themselves, and then they can save this and share it out for their learning, or to be able to collaborate with other students or with the instructor themselves. For language arts, another way that you could use this is with informative text, where then the students can also go through and label different areas, whether it's a header, a subheading, underlining vocabulary clues to vocabulary definitions, underlining resources, numbering paragraphs, whatever the case may be, because you can, again, go in, you can set your background, and it is there for the students then to manipulate it however they need to through the instructions. And then for math, a great way would be for the students to maybe label geometric figures, and then they can also put in different text boxes or even sticky notes and describe how they went about giving that information, or how they know that information through maybe even a text or an equation that they were working through as well. So those are those three that are sharing for actual instruction time. Now, a lot of times we want to know what students have learned for the day or questions that they may have. So here's a template that we actually have through STEM Scopes. And in this case, I uploaded it and I put it in for the background again, and it's an exit ticket. So students can either use a text box or they can use the sticky notes again. I love sticky notes, whether it's Post-it notes or sticky notes on here, and add those, and then actually ask the students to maybe put their initials or their name on there. Or if they want to stay anonymous, that is fine. And give information about what they learned or questions they may have for that day. And then on the next slide, this is another way that you can use a graphic organizer for students to understand their learning. In the top corner, for example, if you're using this for math, you can put the lesson or the units that's there, put a different equation, how the students would work it out, maybe vocabulary words. For language arts, the same thing, root words, how to manipulate through a word, like Sherry had shown in the beginning, like with words pigs and cats, and how to work through that as well. And then here for science, where you can actually too have words already there in some of them, and then students can drag and drop where the pieces that are missing. Graffiti Board is a great way for an engage activity that you can use with your students. You can ask them, for example, what do you know about the universe? Or what do you know about the water cycle, for example? What do you know about multiplication? Or what do you know about a specific character from a book? And students can pre-fill this graffiti board. And then as you are actually teaching the unit or going through a unit, you can refer back to this graffiti board and discuss with students what actually is true, what they already knew, or maybe make some modifications for their learning. And then they can also have this for a study guide for later, for formative or assessment in some sense like that. Now, with Marzano, we know that it's always a great way to finish the day or finish a unit for students to show what they know or how they're feeling about their learning for that day. So they can take a sticky note and just put their initials or their name, and then they can drag it to their box on how they're feeling about that content. So I love Nemo. So that's why I use these three images here. Like, I totally rock this dude. The next one here where you had the can't even think of what the Stingray, where he was the teacher in the movie. So I'd need a little bit more assistance with information. And then the one at the bottom where Dory just always needs a little extra support as she's going through life. And sometimes we need a little extra support before we can move on with our unit. So this is a great way of just having students evaluate their learning for that day or for that unit. And then I'm going to turn this one over to Karina.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Those were awesome ideas. Here's a brain dump, which is sometimes used in math. And I know this is just a blank Jamboard. I decided to make it black just because it was a set background that I could use. And again, I could add images if I want to, if I have a specific topic that I'm working on. But here I wanted to show you once again, because I did notice that when I tried the equation, even though it looked right on my end, it didn't quite work. So let me try it one more time and show you. For example, this is everything I know about a half. So one student wrote a Post-it note. Somebody made a representation. And now it just moved because I moved the picture. And somebody wrote the numerator and denominator in a half. So what if I wanted to try to actually use a fraction bar? Well, let me try this again and see if equation wants to cooperate with us. I have equation in my toolbar, so I'm going to open it up. There it is at the bottom. Once I have that, I have lots of different tools. One of the ones that I shared before was the math space. So let's try this one more time. In math space, you have the ability to have lots of different things. So right here was the shapes that I tried to add before. Let me add this time instead a rectangle. And now I'm going to insert it. And once I click insert at the top, I can go back to my Jamboard and Control V to copy, and it's supposed to be there. Now, for some reason, it's not seeming to work at this moment, but I know that it works because I've used it. And I also want to let you know, because I saw a question in the chat, students do not necessarily have to have equation as part of their Google Chrome, but they can use the tools if you put them on a Jamboard for them. I'm thinking there's something going on with the connection right now since I am presenting. That's why you're not able to see it. But I promise you that if you are using equation, like I said before, you can go into the tools, copy whatever it is that you want. And after you have it, let me try this again with a fraction bar. I can click on it to make sure I know what I'm coloring. Let's see if this time it works. Doesn't seem to be wanting to change. Let's try that one more time. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and insert again and copy paste. And it's not showing up on my Jamboard, but I promise you it does work. So I guess it's having a problem right now with StreamYard. It doesn't want to show it to you, but like I said, I promise if you give it a try, you can turn all of those different things that you need for math, like a protractor, the students can actually manipulate it. If you wanted to show, you can actually find a grid, and students can actually show coordinate grids with this tool. So please give it a try, see if it works for you. Sorry it's not working right now, but that's okay. That happens sometimes. I want to remind you that one thing that for the Jamboards, you should always remember that it's best used when you have up to 49 users. So today you are going to get a copy of every single Jamboard that you saw that we used. And as soon as you get it, you're going to be making a copy of the Jamboards that we gave you. And a really good idea is that if you use the 3 dots at the top and you make a copy of that one, then you'll have all the original templates and you can choose to do whatever you want with those templates. Maybe you want to delete all of the ones that are not for math because you want to make the math ones together. You can always add. And what I like about when I make a copy is that I actually can make it and put it into a special file. Instead of it staying in the Jamboard collection, I can actually put it in my drive under a file, let's say if I'm working with fractions. So please take a look at all of the things that we've created for you. And if you need any help, remember that you can reach out to us anytime.
Awesome, ladies. This is great. I hope everyone can take away at least one thing that they can use with their student. Again, like Karina said, all of these templates will be available for you to use right away and to manipulate and change as needed. So we want to remind you that coming soon is our annual tech conference. So it is slated for October 15th. And so we want you to save the date. We cannot wait for this tech conference this year. The theme is Fast Forward, a decade of change in a year. And we're so looking forward to it, and we can't wait for you to join us. Also remember, this video and all of the resources will be available on our EdTech training site at edtechtraining.palmbeachschools.org. And as always, if you need any help, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'll be glad to assist you. All right, we really hope you have a beautiful weekend, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Continue to jam with us.